Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome to my February wrap-up. I read 5 books this month and we're going to talk about them. I'm not going to waste your time, so we're going to start right away. The first book that I read was Green Dot by Madeline Gray. This is an Australian author. She just came out with her second book, actually, called Chosen Family, which I really wanted to read, but it's not out in paperbacks. It's a new book, and you will not catch me buying a hardback anytime soon. I ended January actually on a very high note. From what I remember, I do think Department of Speculation was the last book that I'd read in January, but I'd read a lot of either mid books or leaning towards sad, and I wanted something really funny, and I heard that Green Dot was really funny, so I decided to pick it up, and it indeed made me laugh quite a few times. I will say it felt very millennial-esque in some aspects, which sometimes just does not make me laugh. Let me tell you what it's about. We follow a woman called Hera. She's in her mid-20s. She's kind of just living through life, needs to find a job, gets a job, and she gets into a relationship with one of her co-workers, but turns out he's a married man. You discover this pretty much in the prologue, so not spoiling anything. On the back it says that it's kind of written with the lightness of Bridget Jones, and I guess I feel towards it the exact same way that I feel towards Bridget Jones, where it was fun, it was a good watch, it was fun, it was a good read. It wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was what I was looking for at the time, but I'd also read Cleopatra and Frankenstein in January, and those are very similar, have very similar themes. So it wasn't groundbreaking, is what I'm trying to say. But I would recommend if you're looking for a light, funny, literary fiction. So that was Green Dot. Then I read Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid, which I had tried to read last year, I think in February as well, or maybe a little later in the year, because I wanted to get into Jamaica Kincaid and I'd heard great things from Melissa. This follows the story of Annie John. It is her coming of age. It's pretty much following her from, I think, when she was 10 years old to being an adult, so like 18. And it explores the shift from childhood to adolescence and how that impacts her relationship specifically to her mother. It is set in colonial Antigua, I want to say. It very much has this sort of colonial aspect to it, which kind of mirrored a lot of the things that I've been talking about in my classes, so in that sense it was really interesting. I found the mother-daughter relationship and exploration really compelling because I don't think I ever read something like that, especially in the teenage years, because I think that's a very singular moment. So in that sense I really enjoyed it. The writing was also pretty easy and it flowed very nicely, similar to Green Dot. I enjoyed it as a book. I don't think I was very attached to, not that I was detached, but I was very aware that I was reading as I was reading, which is kind of a reoccurring theme that I had throughout February, and so it made picking up the books a little harder each time, and it meant that I would be spending a few days on books that were less than 200 pages because it was hard to get back into them. So I guess I was in a sort of slump as I was reading this, I don't know. But I still would recommend it. I think it has that theme that's just really interesting and that I don't see explored much. So I'm also really curious to read A Small Place. So yeah, I do want to read more of Jamaica Kincaid. So that was Annie John. Next, we've got Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I finally read it, and I read it alongside my roommate, and so we were chatting back and forth with what was going on, and there was so much stuff going on, so it was such an enjoyable book to be reading as a buddy read. If you have the opportunity to do that, I would highly recommend, because it's crazy the amount of things that happen in this book. We follow this man who happens upon the place called Wuthering Heights, which is like this kind of old mansion set in the moors. It's in a very windy place, very dark, and he meets this cast of characters, namely Heathcliff, who is a little cold to him, and he is renting another place that Heathcliff owns, and once he gets to that other place called Thrushcross Grange, he meets a servant called Nellie, and he asks Nellie what the story of this man is, what the story of the mansion is. And so Nellie kind of goes back and talks about the story of Heathcliff. And so we bounce back to the past where we meet Catherine, and one day her dad brings back this little boy, Heathcliff, from Liverpool, who is very clearly a person of color with dark skin, and then it ensues. It speaks to themes of this kind of cyclical aspect of violence, the impacts of racism and classism. It was so compelling and thought-provoking. I can't believe that it was written when it was written, especially with the themes that it covers. And in that sense, a lot of the themes are still relevant today, which is really interesting to follow. I really loved it, and I was so enamored. I also made kind of this comparison with The Count of Monte Cristo, if you pick up what I'm putting down. But I really loved the book, which will bring me to the movie, because I did see that and I said I would speak about it. Inevitably, there are going to be some spoilers on the book and the movie when I talk about the movie, so if you don't want to hear my review, you can skip. Okay, well, let's start with the positives, because it can't all be negative. I really liked the visuals, specifically the parts outside, the parts on the cliffs, the wind. Overall, even, I think it was very visually pleasing. Some of the choices made in the second half of the movie with the costumes and the mansion, the decor, I personally didn't love. It felt very fake, but I know that was the point. That kind of put me out of it, because I found that the first part of the movie was very, sort of visually at least, kind of accurate to the past when the book is actually set, while the second part felt like I was watching a whole different movie visually. Now onto what I didn't like. I found removing the whole racial commentaries surrounding Heathcliff very upsetting, because a lot of the reason that he acts the way he is, especially towards Isabella, also comes from the racism that he's faced, and even the classism that he's faced, which that was kind of brushed off in a way. It didn't go into it as much. When Edgar popped on screen, my roommate was like, "Is that Edgar?" And I was like, no way. And it was. That was really shocking. I don't know why she chose to interchange Heathcliff with Edgar's race, since it added nothing. Especially because a big part of why Catherine does not marry Heathcliff is due to his race and his class. A big part of it is his race. And changing it to make Edgar, who is a white, rich man, brown, was really strange. Very strange casting choices, I will say. Also, the fact that Catherine's brother's character was just placed on the dad was a little strange as well to me. And then regarding the sex scenes, I don't think there needed to be any of the morally ambiguous ones or just the kind of BDSM ones added to the movie. I don't think they served any purpose. And when it came to Catherine and Heathcliff's sex scenes between each other, I just didn't find them that believable. They were back to back to back to back to back, which kind of felt like a TikTok montage to me. And I also was not feeling it that much. Also, a few times I got taken out of the movie from the accents, which I found were kind of strange. Most of the time, I will say the actors did a great job. My problem's not really with the actors or what they did, it's more the choices that were made with the movie. And I think that the things that they removed from the book are so important, whereas the things that they added serve no purpose to me. I don't mind that they only chose to focus on part 1 of the book, even though I think part 2 with the whole vengeance plot is so interesting and so compelling, and the way that it bleeds into the children is also fascinating. But you know, if you want to focus on Catherine and Heathcliff's story, I think keeping race in the conversation is really important. So yeah, that was kind of my 2 cents on the movie. Didn't really love it. I was captivated enough that I didn't feel interminable, and it was visually pleasing to the eye, both as an adaptation and even as a story itself. I just needed more. So that was the movie. Let's go back to my February wrap-up. I read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which, if you've seen my list of 2026, Sua is on the list, but I wanted to start with The Bluest Eye because this is her debut novel, and we follow this poor Black family in 1940s Ohio, and essentially we're kind of focusing on the daughter called Pecola, who really wishes that she had blue eyes. And so in that sense, it really talks about racism, but also just beauty standards in general, and it explores some violence, some insecurity for Black people, and especially as a consequence of poverty. It has a lot of dimensions to it, and it's kind of written in 3 different ways, because sometimes we look at Pecola through the eyes of another young girl, lives in another family, and then sometimes we understand Pecola's life by looking at her parents' upbringing and how her parents met and their dynamic, and then sometimes we just follow Pecola. Yeah, I just think the dimensions and how it was written was so fascinating. I'm really excited to read more Toni Morrison, because I think that this being her debut says a lot about her talent as a writer. I did have a bit of a similar problem with most of my reads except for Wuthering Heights, where I felt somehow detached or just kind of in a slump. Like, it's not that I wouldn't read, but I couldn't feel fully immersed when I was reading, so I was very aware that I was reading. And it was a case when I read The Bluest Eye, but I still really enjoyed it as a book. Maybe had I read it at a different time where I didn't feel a bit slumpish, I would have loved it even more. But just judging the book itself, I can say that I loved it, if that makes sense. How I felt in the moment, I felt very fascinated and very interested in the commentaries, but I wasn't 100% there. I'd say it was more like 85% into it as a whole. Some of the writing in here is genuinely so beautiful. I really enjoyed how she seeped the seasons into the story as well, and how it moved. The end was really shocking and at the same time kind of liberating. I think it's a book that I wish to revisit in a long time, I think. But in the meantime, I'm really excited to get to her second novel, which is Sula. And then finally throughout the month, I read Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. This is a collection of essays that talk on different subjects, mainly through the prism of intersectionality. Most of them revolve around race, class, and sexuality and gender. Audre Lorde is one of my favorite writers and academics that I discovered in my academic journey. I think the way that she talks about these really important issues is very important and very gripping. She's also just very convincing as a writer, and I really enjoy how she speaks about these issues. As a whole, the collection can feel a little repetitive, so if I were to read it again, I would read it a bit differently, because even though I read it kind of sporadically, I ended up reading like 1 essay a day essentially for the second half of February, and I think even that felt a little repetitive, so I would space it out a bit more. In this collection, I've written my favorites, which were Poetry is Not a Luxury. Audre Lorde is also a poet, and so when she talks about poetry, it feels very meaningful because you can tell that it means so much to her. The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House, which is an iconic essay and still referenced so much. Age, Race, Class, and Sex, Women Redefining Difference. This is the first work that I read by Audre Lorde a few years ago, and so it still has this kind of very special meaning to me, but I also think it raises such important issues. And then finally, I really enjoyed Eye to Eye, Black Woman, Hatred, and Anger, because there is a problematic but predominant narrative of the angry Black woman, and I really enjoyed Audre Lorde's take on that and kind of the reasoning behind it as well. So that was Sister Outsider. Highly recommend. Would recommend reading it not in one sitting, but sporadically, maybe reading a few essays a month. But I think Audre Lorde's work is super important, so if you haven't given it a try, I would really try it out. I did read another book throughout February, but I ended up finishing it in March, so we will talk about it in March. But those were 5 books that I read. My favorites were Wuthering Heights and The Bluest Eye. Yeah, let me know what you read in February. And yeah, subscribe. I hope I'll see you soon. Bye.